All right, welcome to Be Connected. What in the world? And today I have an amazing co-host with me, my beautiful wife Cheryl, who's also a Be Connected coach. And
Yes, I am.
for some reason we're getting some feedback. I don't know what that's about, but I'm hearing myself through your microphone. So anyway, we will get started here. And today we're going to be talking. Let me catch you up a little bit. Cheryl, why don't you mute? Why don't you say hi and then mute so that I don't have to listen back? Okay, so I'll come back to you, Cheryl, in a minute, and then we'll just navigate the muting of your mic in between so that we're not annoying the people that are joining us here. And so if you're here, feel free to post your comments or questions in the chat. And we're going to be talking about, as we have been for the last number of episodes, we're, I think, episode 8 on attracting influencers. And we're going to be talking again about the approach. We left off on Monday with Christine and Rickey and some others. And today I have Cheryl. And we're going to be talking about the whole collaborative and or consultative dialogue. So if you don't know where you're at, and if you feel like you're in the middle of a conversation, let me catch you up. Kind of previously on Be Connected, what in the world? We're going to talk about the whole where we've been, so to speak. So we started out talking about what is an influencer in the first episode. Then we talked about, and that was an interesting conversation. Then we went into our mindset and the various approaches to the mindset. Now we're in approach. So we talked about the attraction mindset. We talked about being reactive, a problem solver for the influencer or the person you're trying to work with, or maybe doing it all on your own. The different mindsets, different types, different approaches that people do. The hard worker, those who are all about building relationships, and then what I'm calling the challenger approach or mindset. And that's really the approach that I find is the most effective. And that's what we've been talking about as we've gone through this, that challenger mindset. So we got into approach, and that was a great discussion. We talked about preparing for the initial contact by going through researching and identifying the things that would lead us or enable us to have some initial contacts with folks. We talked about getting their attention, talking about things that might be of interest, and then establishing some credibility, whether it's your familiarity with their industry, the business, maybe some things that you've learned or could apply to their business, that kind of stuff, then generating some insights that you can take forward into initiating the contact. And we kind of got through those discussions, which was really the first 3 phases we talked about last time, which was really the first 3 steps getting to the initial contact and meeting is to build trust, to develop some strategic questions that you can begin. And it's important, the question part. We learned some things today. We actually had a discussion today with some decision makers in a large, complex organization. And we had some learnings there about how things work and how things don't work, and so on. So we might reference that a little bit in this discussion. And then also ensuring that your understanding of solutions that might ultimately have value. And then now you're ready for the contact and the meeting. And once we talked about making that contact, kicking that off, starting with some of those questions. And we were really talking about the dialogue that kind of goes with the collaborative or the consulting dialogue. So we got there, we were talking about the key is asking questions and then listening to the answers. But it wasn't just answering any questions. It was really, we talked about situational questions. What is the situation that you perceive that they're in? Or at least exploring situations that might elicit you having a discussion around problems. So when you think about situations and you think about, in this case, we're on the BeeKonnected platform. This is largely targeted at coaches, people that want to have these large uh, opportunities to talk to influencers, to large organizations, that kind of thing. When you think of situational types of questions, Cheryl, do you have any thoughts around that? That, and when I say situational questions,
Well, I think asking them how things normally work in whatever situation or thing they do in their company that you're going to help them with. So, how do you do your trainings? How do you do your meetings with your clients? And some of those situations, maybe understanding how they operate so that you can determine your best entrance into that.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and in fact, one of the things, and our common point of reference very recently, as of today, is a conversation around Pampered Chef, and Cheryl comes into that conversation uniquely qualified and uniquely credible in having that conversation because she is and has been a consultant for the Pampered Chef company and kind of understands some of the things they're doing, is taking advantage of and trying to help them with some of the things that they're doing today. That from our conversation today, they seem to be pretty happy with some of the success, but also the situation um, still is leaving them wanting. So in that particular case, Cheryl, what was some of the questions that maybe you asked or and got answers to, or still have questions for? As a collaborative dialogue, by the way, isn't a one meeting type of thing. That's one of the most important things to understand, is you're not going to get generally through a consultative dialogue in just one meeting. In fact, it may take several layers, especially with a large company where you're talking to a decision maker, not the decision maker, because in fact, in larger companies, it's not a buyer per se, it's a buyer's table. It's a whole group of people that really get involved in ultimately making a decision to move to a new platform, to a new way of doing things, because that creates change, and change inherently has risk, right? So, what are your takeaways from that conversation that we had today, where we were talking to them, and it was not the first conversation, it was actually about 3 or 4 touch points down the road today. But what would you say, you situational things that you learned that were good, and things, questions that are still remaining as you think of that dialogue?
Well, before I talk about questions, I'd like to assert one thing, and that's that when you are having a conversation with somebody, allow them time to talk and leave them some space to do so, because you're probably going to find out things you wouldn't even think to ask them. If you give them a chance to talk, maybe share their impressions or their questions or thoughts before you go into the next part of the meeting. And they may bring up something that'll guide the whole rest of the discussion. So beyond that, then, in terms of questions, I think, trying to zero in on not only how they do business, but what are some of their pain points? What are some of the challenges that they have? and understanding where they're coming from, and you'll also understand how open they are, and you'll understand how receptive they are to you in the way that they answer you. You know, one of the things to really watch, and I know Dave did this a lot in the meeting today, is body language, to understand, are the types of questions that you're asking, is it maybe too soon for you to be asking this based on your relationship with that person? Maybe they don't trust you yet. Maybe they don't um, feel like you're not just there to sell them something. So watch the body language, and that'll guide your questions too, and determine if you're maybe going too fast and need to pull back a little bit, or if they're very open, you can just dive right in.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And actually, you are 100% right. One of the things we talked about, not today in this call, but in the previous episode, we were talking about being a product evangelist and taking that approach with a large, complex situation, whether it's the client, the solution, or in the case of BeeKonnected, we have so many things to offer, right? That it's a complex solution. So you're really, maybe everything isn't going to get them excited. Maybe all the things that are there aren't really what they're interested in. And you won't know that until they tell you. And so part of this collaborative dialogue, you said a key word there, which is kind of the next step when you're talking about the situation. We see a situation where, in this case, they're doing very large meetings with large groups of people attending. And the situation is they're trying to engage their consultants. They're trying to give attribution to those consultants. So our P3 solution has probably the most interest of the things that they have, as well as the fact that they are doing video meetings on the Zoom platform right now. But there's a lot of things that I don't know that we fully discovered yet about that isn't working as well for them, but we suspect there are things, right? We talked about having to say, okay, get back with the person that invited you here, when you may or may not even know. Now, the key is that even though we have experience in this company with network marketing companies, I have experience with network marketing companies myself, as does Cheryl. They're different, even though they have similar attributes and similar challenges. In some cases, they're not the same company. That was one of the things.
And they're somewhat competitive. It's interesting, because you would think that direct sales companies would be very supportive of each other, but it's interesting that there's a competitive nature there too. They do some things better than the rest. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're listening to them, you're really talking in terms of getting them to talk to you about what matters to them. And because you're listening to them and you're listening to their answers, you then begin to build that rapport, that trust, that right, if you will, to then uncover maybe some pain that they have. I don't know in our call today, honestly, that we uncovered any major pain points, although we know there's some major opportunities still there. And we didn't do that, but so that's kind of got to be teed up in the next conversation, is what challenges are you have? What are the pain points? So we talked about the situation. They're a direct sales company. They have these large events. They also have smaller events. They have consultants that they want to train. They have consultants that they want to be successful. They want to help them with duplication. All those things, I think, were established as, yeah, those are all things that we want to do, right? But the real pain is where you're going, because you can't get to offering their need of the value you provide until you understand the pain. And so that's an area that this collaborative dialogue is intended to reveal. And that comes through asking pain like questions. So as opposed to assuming that they leave a lot of money on the table or they don't get the conversions that they want, for example. Maybe they do. Maybe that's not the pain point. Maybe it's something else. In this case, maybe it's an integration with some existing software, existing capability, right? I mean, those are things that you can uncover through questions. What do you think about that, Cheryl? You're again, this is
Yeah,
very fresh, so
I think you can uncover a lot through questions, and I think you reveal a lot through your questions, and you need to do your research, because if your question is about something that you obviously should know about, if you know anything about the company, then that takes away any emotional bank account that you may have had with that person, takes away some of your credibility. Know what their terminology is as far as you're addressing them. So sound like and do understand enough about their company that you can use a little bit of their lingo without trying to be obnoxious about it, that you can understand some of their terminology. What do they call, if they're a direct sales company, what do they call their reps? Are they consultants? Are they reps? Are they, whatever?
business
Things like that.
owners, or yeah,
Yeah, things like that are small, but you would be amazed at the difference it makes when you're talking to them and maybe you're saying reps, reps, reps repeatedly, and that's not how they term them. Every time you say that, it's a little bit of a with them. So besides asking good questions, make sure that they're informed questions.
yeah. I think that's one key thing that I always say is, users. We refer to people sometimes on the platform, right, as users of the platform. I say users are for tech people and drug dealers. We have members. We talk about BeeKonnected. We have members. We don't have users. We have members. We have a community. We have people, right? And to me, it's offensive to call people users of the technology. And it's the same thing in these other companies. When you're talking, again, even though there are a lot of similarities, and it does improve our credibility to recognize that even though we may not know everything about their specific company as well as they do, and that we know things about that industry and those companies like them, they don't want to be thrown in a big bucket and saying, okay, we assume you're all like this. It's like generalizing, it's putting them in a box. It's really somewhat degrading and demoralizing. It doesn't feel good. So that collaborative dialogue in your research and understanding of some of those little nuances that Cheryl mentions is critical. And that's why you have to do your homework and have to be prepared. And if you know somebody in that industry, but you're not an expert, it's easy enough to find. You can go like Cheryl did with not just with Pampered Chef, but with Mary Kay. And she went to some of their meetings and kind of saw how they did things and said, with my experience, I think there's some things that you could consider. And what kind of pain are you experiencing with that? So when you get to where they tell you, well, that really caused me a problem because I leave a lot of money on the table. I have consultants who get frustrated and quit because they invited a bunch of people to this event and nobody signed up. Okay, now that's a legitimate pain. And then you say, well, so what's the implications of them inviting people and them not showing up? And then the implications are that they quit. So our retention of consultants is not as good as it should be, or we don't sell as much, the company doesn't sell as much product, obviously, if you're looking at a corporate level. So there's a lot of implications of there, so that leads you. So you've got the situation, you've got the problem. You kind of, when you're talking about implications, once they've told you what a problem is, then you have kind of an opportunity to delve deeper. Oh, really? What's that? What's the implication of that to you? I mean, you generally speaking, the answer, right? That's money, it's time, it's frustration, could be any number of things, right? But you want to continue that thread, right? You want to continue to see how bad is it? How embedded is that into their psyche or their company thought process? Because only then are you able to really clearly identify a need that they've already recognizes internally, right? I mean, we're meeting with somebody and we were meeting with somebody, she's not the only person, but she has a key job, a strategic events leader, and she has a responsibility. And some of the things that we have within the company could solve problems with her. And hopefully we'll get to where we really understand what those are and how important they are, because that is going to be the needs value proposition that we're talking about. They need it, and we have a unique value proposition to serve that. And until you get through that collaborative dialogue, kind of offering a solution, just throwing solutions out there and saying, hey, well, this will help you with, I mean, I think that they're going to give you the one or two things that are the most important, and then the rest of the stuff is kind of like icing on the cake or whatever. It's going to be additional stuff. But if you don't get to the real one that's created the dialogue in the first place, then you're kind of toast, right? What other thoughts do you have, Cheryl? It doesn't take long to get to 30 minutes. So we've got like 6 minutes left. So this is not, we're going to kind of stop at this collaborative dialogue, and we will probably pick up on Monday in the next episode, talking about the collaborative dialogue. And then we'll move into some of the other attributes and things that you'll do as you kind of move forward then into the approach. But what else did you learn today, or have you learned? I know it's not just today. A lot of these things I learned back when we were applying this kind of approach in doing these, as I said before, these large, very complex outsourcing transactions. But it's the same thing. What else did you take away? You're on mute.
Sorry, I think we've covered most of it. I can't think of anything else at the moment.
Right.
Other than truly listening to the answers and not just continuing on your own trajectory without being flexible enough and agile enough to change direction based on what they're saying.
Yeah, we actually talked about that in the last meeting, and it really bears reminding ourselves is that we're very excited. I mean, you should be excited about what we're doing and BeeKonnected. We're very passionate about it. And that's often the case, right? Is your product, what it can mean to that client or clients like that client, but you really need to take all that brilliance and that excitement and energy and focus it in responding to their answers to your questions after you've listened to what they say. It sounds so basic and so simple, but you can get so excited that you blow right past it. And you just want to make sure that you get it all out there. And that's why we're breaking these conversations up, these discussions that we're having on this process into 30-minute chunks, because I suggest you go digest this one, go listen to some of the previous ones, and you'll see how they kind of connect together. One of the ways that this technology or this approach to consultative selling or consultative, it's really selling. There's nothing wrong with selling, right? It's really a consultative process. We applied at Accenture. It was kind of prompted by one of the books back in 1988 called Spin Selling. And that's where the situation, problem, implications, and then needs value comes from. That's what SPIN, that's the acronym, that's what it comes from. So if you want to get more detail on that, you can read that book, or you can hang in here because we're going to be offering the application of those techniques to the process of doing the things with BeeKonnected as we move into premium content and we get into really how to make everybody able to go and have those conversations. I would love nothing more than everybody that's currently all 25,000 people or anybody that wants to, especially the 100 elite coaches and stuff here, to be able to go and have those same conversations with these influencers that they know that they can build relationships that they're inspired to have and do that. So we'll come back next Monday at 1:30 Central with episode 9 of this, and we'll be talking, we'll pick up with the collaborative discussion. The last thing I'll say is the last thing we had in our meeting today is when you're doing a collaborative or consultative sale, there's 2 great outcomes of any of these calls. First one is they actually say, yeah, I want to do it. Let's get going. That's unlikely at the stage that we're at when we were talking to Pampered Chef. It can happen, but generally speaking, you got to be more patient than that. But the other outcome you're looking for is a defined next meeting. And that's the thing you got to do is focus on either one of those 2 outcomes and making sure when you're completed the time allotted that you've teed up the next discussion, next set of questions, and so on. So with that, Cheryl, thank you for joining me. I appreciate having you here. And
thank you for the opportunity.
And we will see you, everybody, next Monday on the next episode of BeeKonnected. What in the world? And we'll continue our discussion about attracting and engaging influencers. Thank you, everybody, for coming.